Weiss Schwarz has hundreds of sets across many different series of anime, games, movies, and sometimes stuff I don't want to talk about. When getting people into the game, one of the things I've heard when they watch over our games is that we have at locals is that all of our games are the same, and the fact that both players have a game plan of using a way to consistently get cards back and sculpt your hand and kill your opponent the second they get to level 3, and pray that RNGesus likes you enough to not let your opponent cancel. And while there may be some truth to this statement, I compiled a list of my favorite decks, what makes them unique, what their game plan is, and some general strategies involved when playing the deck. Hopefully, if you are on the fence about playing Weiss Schwarz, this video helps discuss the various gameplay types found throughout the decks and what makes them stand out more than just a different anime girl on the card. Bofuri is, in my opinion, an almost perfect set. Not in the sense of it being powerful, far from it, but in the sense that you can find a use for almost every card, as long as it's not in green, in the set. One of the premier casual decks that came out of this set was anything that utilized the Mai and Yui level 1 combo package. The combo being on +2 soul climax helps the deck push damage quickly to try and get your opponent at higher levels than they are prepared for, resulting in suboptimal turns while you can take the pace of the game you normally would. Most 2-soul Bofuri decks utilize one of two top ends. A door top end that utilizes all the stock generated by your level 1 combos for a massive blowout turn, or a pants top end which sacrifices finishing power for a more consistent way of slamming climaxes outside of your climax swap in the Climax Rize Frederica. The way you want to play this deck is by taking advantage of your opponent's current deck state, compression, and current clock. Does your opponent have a bunch of climaxes in their waiting room and a thick deck with 5 cards in clock? Try fielding Yui's as a solid strategy because Yui's level up condition. She doesn't care if she was the attacker or not, you will always get the climax combo effect off of your opponent leveling up as long as she is in the front row. As for Mai, play her when your opponent is decently compressed and or you don't think you can level up your opponent this turn. This is because Mai's combo effect only goes off if the damage she was dealing is cancelled. Being able to determine which level 1 combo to use is a major factor in performing well with this deck. Just be careful to use your stock to play around decompression tools such as Fumio or Stock Swap, because you will generate more stock than you know what to do with. Love Live Sunshine is another of the two flavors of aggressive decks that you will see in Weiss Schwarz. While more traditional aggressive decks such as Hololive or the previously mentioned 2-soul Bofuri will leverage tri-fielding at level 0 and using high counts of soul triggers and the decks to push more damage in the early game, Love Live Sunshine's approach to playing more aggressively is by sending extra instances of damage at your opponent starting at level 2. This is done by the Extra Boosters Chica, Rico, and Yo package, where if you have the Rico in your clock at level 2, you can play the Chica, and when the Chicas play, you can pay an additional stock to summon the Yo from your waiting room. And the Yo's effect is, when it attacks, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a music character, you deal your opponent damage equal to the level of the revealed card. Another deck that utilizes a similar strategy of burning your opponent early is Guilty Gear, with standby and Ramathal out at level 2 and just begging your opponent not to send you to level 3. Because of the nature of the level 3 Yo, many Love Live Sunshine decks will run a small amount of level 0s so they can maximize the likelihood of getting a Yo burn off as early as possible. Other effective strategies in deck building are running a lot of ways to filter or look at the top card of your deck and try to fish for high level cards to put on top of your deck. When playing Love Live Sunshine, you always want to keep track of how many level 0 cards are going back into your deck whenever you refresh. Having a great understanding of your level 0 to non-level 0 ratios will help give you a good understanding of how likely you are to hit your Yo burns and how far you might need to dig until you see a high level card. A good way to consistently set up for Chica early play is by sending copies of your level 3 Yo into your stock whenever you trigger your choice climaxes. As long as a Yo is then at most 4 cards deep into your stock, you can easily pay it out by doing your standard pay 1 for Rico, pay 2 for Chica, and pay an additional 1 to summon the Yo. I also recommend watching this video by Shizukats on the level 0 Kanon Sack Saver, which talks about the many different ways you can use the Kanon to filter the top card of your deck by repeatedly saving other copies of the Kanon, but only watch it after watching this video, of course. Now we move on to the more standard and simple decks in the video, Bocchi the Rock. If you're subscribed to me, first of all, why would you be? And second of all, you've probably already seen my 2 videos on this stupid set already and thought you would finally escape the Bocchi the Rock propaganda. Sadly, the Bocchi the Rock propaganda will continue until morale improves. Bocchi's game plan is very simple and vanilla. Use your level 1 combo to generate a bunch of stock, try and stabilize at level 2 by playing a bunch of healers, and when you do get to level 3, use your finisher and blow your opponent out of the water. What makes Bocchi the Rock so special, besides it being my favorite anime, is that many of your cards can either have cheap costs or can be discounted. For example, your early play Rio is small at 9.5k power with no real way to boost it, but has the ability to be played out for essentially free by sending a specific Bocchi from your stage into your waiting room. And because you have a brainstorm that gives you an increased hand size and a level 1 combo that can add 3 cards to your hand for the price of 1, and is not a resource that is as important to monitor compared to other decks because of how easily Bocchi can just get its hand back out of nowhere. Another example is your finisher Rio, where you can kill off one of your own characters to look at 3 cards on top of your deck, send 1 to hand, 1 to stock, and 1 to your waiting room. Not only does it help fill up your hand, replacing the card you just sacrificed, it refills your stock, allowing you to do more things your level 3 turn, but also digs for your climax and other copies of your finisher, making this an extremely consistent finisher. There aren't a whole lot of deck-specific strategies for Bocchi because of how vanilla its gameplay is. Most of being good with Bocchi simply comes from being good at the game and having a strong sense of card counting and a good memory to remember where all of your pieces are. Weiss has a few ways for decks to have a more mid-game stabilization strategy. The most common ways these decks operate is either by consistently healing like Nikke, or reducing the damage incoming like Sora Turbo and Hololive. However, these can be translated to other games such as Magic the Gathering, where you can have life gain in reducing your opponent's power. However, Goblin Slayer's form of a stall deck is so uniquely Weiss Schwarz that it has positioned itself as one of my favorite decks to ever come out of this game. The claim to fame for Goblin Slayer is the Trial Deck's Torch card. It allows you to look up to 4 cards at the top of your deck and grab a character. The most important about this card is that it can be played on your opponent's turn and is easily grabbable by your beefy level 1 combo. This gives you access to deck manipulation on your opponent's turn. Got a lot of climaxes out? Play Torch and windmill slam with 4 cards on the top of your deck. Got a good deck state? Hold back on your torches and use them at a later date, either on your turn or your opponent's. Another great card to come out of the deck is the 2-1 Cowgirl. Turning all your torches into 2k backups can very easily turn your filters into board pluses. Goblin Slayer also has access to Gate Scroll, allowing you to remove your opponent's characters during their own turn and returning them back to their hand to deny any on reverse and after attack triggers or climax combos, and opens up lanes to push for more damage because you aren't really running a real finisher in this deck. In the year of our Lord 2025, playing Goblin Slayer now is a huge uphill battle. Most decks easily clear 7k on attack simply by existing. Your mid-game bodies aren't big off-turn, leading to them being easily swung over without being prepared, and you have no real way to stabilize outside of digging for climaxes off of your torch, or if you get lucky and standby out a 3-2 Witch Super Booster. That doesn't mean it's impossible. Death-gripping protection pieces such as counters and torches allows you to maintain the board the way the deck wants, and you can use the main set torch to grappling hook your opponent's back row in front of one of your on-reverse effects to try and close your game with your measly burn 2. Gate Scroll is extremely important to your game plan of not dying as opposed to the standard game plan of killing your opponent, so if you believe your opponent has a counter that will kill one of your characters and you are at or close to level 3, I recommend siding because that's just how good Gate Scroll is. And outside of first deck, you never really want to look at all 4 cards off of Torch. The more you dig with Torch, the more likely you are to remove a climax out of your deck. Looking at 2 to 3 cards is what I generally do, and 1 to 2 in the extreme late game when you're on your 3rd deck. Very seldomly do we get a combo deck in the Neo-Standard format of Weiss Schwarz. Bushiroad's design team generally plays it safe with a lot of effects, with a few exceptions, and prevents a lot of people from winning out of nowhere outside of sometimes just eating 14 straight damage. The original Tokyo Avengers Dual Laners deck is very much a combo deck, and is one of the coolest things to ever come out of this silly anime JPEG game. The deck revolves around these 2 Kabaji and Chifuyu cards. Both of them care about only having 2 characters in your front row, and each of them either generate hand or stock respectively. After generating ass loads of stock and being sent to level 3, while your opponent's still at early level 2 or late level 1, you windmill slam a bunch of Mitsuyas to get some on-play burn, and then get a bunch of burn off of your Bocchi level 3 combo. Later lists of Tokyo Avengers lean more into a Pachin Peiyan package and try to leverage the advantage of having 3 16.5Ks on level 1, which I just find to be more boring even though it is the better deck. When playing the pure dual laner version of the deck, you'll want to prioritize generating stock slightly more than your hand. You're playing a very slow game where you're trying to generate as much resources as possible until your damage zone reaches a boiling point, where it is either do or die and you blow your load all over your opponent. To do this, grabbing your trial deck backup off of your soul salvage climaxes is a good way to always keep at least one of your dual laners alive. And as long as you have the 1-0 Mitsuya back row, that lone survivor can become 2 copies and you can rinse and repeat this process until the late game. Generally, you'll want to stock low level cards without soul triggers to try and increase your odds off of hitting soul triggers late game off of your level 3 Mitsuya burns. You can pull a Love Live Sunshine and jam a copy of the Kids Meal Mikey into your stock to allow for a consistent way of it being put into your waiting room via the cost of Bocchi's Climax combo. Remember how I said you could find a use for almost every card in the set? Well, this is probably what I would consider the only real control deck in traditional sense of card game philosophy. The deck revolves around the rare and elusive 2-1 combo with Frederica at the helm. She says that you can play the stock soul, you can shuffle your opponent's cards from their field back into their deck. Not only does this open up lanes and decompress your opponent, but also interacts with the back row, which is pretty rare and can majorly screw over your opponent if they aren't prepared. And if they are prepared, that's more pieces they needed to filter for, as opposed to filtering for cards they actually needed to continue their game plan. The other 2 good pieces of interaction in this deck are the Memory Anti-Change counter and the Sally and Mayfield level down. Anti-Change is always going to be a good card, and the upside of this one sending the card to memory and being a ditch 2 cards as opposed to stock base costs makes it a hot commodity for the deck. Level down is also useful to remove problematic bodies and make your opponent's board much easier to deal with while you're still at lower levels. Your finisher isn't much to write home about, it's mostly just a collection of off finishers that are there just to push the last bit of damage you need to kill off your opponent. Playing this deck can be a bit rough because you are essentially sculpting for your level 1 and 2 games at the same time. While you can most definitely use your level 1 combo to grab all your level 2 pieces, I'm not lucky enough to consistently grab a combined level 2 or higher off of my climax combo. So I'm mostly just relegated to salvaging level 1s and 0s. Also, don't always go into your Frederica combo. If your opponent is playing a standard deck where they only do their level 1 combo, heal once or twice at level 2 and try to blow you out of the water at level 3, they don't really care about their board and it's easily replaceable. Because of this, you don't get as much value off of the interaction your Frederica provides, and you are better off filtering for extra level 1s and trying to loop your level 1 combo until the mid game and try to keep your resources steady. If you're playing against a deck that really cares about their board, however, like an 8 standby deck or an early play Hell deck, you will inconvenience them after 1 turn of Frederica and absolutely decimate them after your 2nd turn. This is because by putting all of their resources into their board as opposed to their hand, they will have to hastily replace those removed bodies with subpar and low-level characters just to generate resources and push damage. Another great strategy is when it comes to the level 0 Sally that pairs with the 2-1 Frederica. On play, it says you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, rearrange them in any order, and then you play a game with your opponent where your opponent guesses the top card of your deck's level, and you draw cards if they guess correctly. Because of how Weiss Schwarz works, you can stack your triggers for the on-play effect in any order you like. Generally, you'll want to do the mill play a game effect first, so that when you do your top check 2, you can guarantee that those cards are going to stay where you want them, so that you can get your top check off your Frederica and confirm it. While these decks aren't the only unique decks in the entire game, it goes to show that there are plenty of different playstyles found within Weiss Schwarz. Even though the core gameplay can look the same when looking from the outside in, these range from hard control and denial like in Bofuri to major storm combos with decks like Tokyo Avengers. So if the cute anime JPEGs don't get you into this game automatically, hopefully the gameplay does. And that's all I ask of you. Try and play Weiss Schwarz.